In January 2020, the world's largest financial data leak landed on investigative journalists' desks. Over 715,000 documents, contracts, emails, financial records, all pointing to one woman. The journalists were from 36 media organizations across 20 countries. They had been working on this for months, in secret. She was living in London, flying private, photographed at fashion weeks in Paris and Milan. Her name was Isabel dos Santos, and she had just been named Africa's richest woman for the third year running. But the documents told a completely different story. They showed hundreds of millions of dollars moved quietly across dozens of countries through shell companies that barely existed. They showed contracts awarded overnight, state funds redirected, a country's wealth funneled into private accounts. The journalists called it the Luanda Leaks, and Isabel dos Santos, worth an estimated $2.1 billion, was at the center of all of it. To understand Isabel, you first have to understand her father. José Eduardo dos Santos ruled Angola for 38 years, one of the longest-serving leaders in African history. He came to power in 1979 during a civil war that would consume the country for decades. Angola sits on one of the largest oil reserves in Africa. Beneath its soil, extraordinary wealth. Above ground, extraordinary poverty. By the time the civil war ended in 2002, Dos Santos had turned Angola into his personal empire. The ruling party, the MPLA, controlled the state controlled the oil, and Dos Santos controlled all of it. Sonangol, the state oil company, was his family's private bank. Contracts flowed to loyalists. Dissent was managed quietly. The outside world looked at Angola's oil revenues and called it a functioning economy. And Isabel? She was his daughter. Born in Baku, Azerbaijan, educated in London at King's College. She returned to Angola with a prestigious degree, a powerful father, and ambitions that dwarfed both. Her first major business venture was a stake in a mobile phone company. The license was granted by the Angolan government, controlled by her father. From there, the playbook never changed. Telecom licenses, banking stakes, media companies, diamond operations, each one awarded, approved, or enabled by the man who ran the country. By 2013, Forbes declared her Africa's first female billionaire. She gave interviews in designer clothes. She spoke eloquently about female empowerment and African development. The world was charmed. Angola was not. Here is the part they don't show you in the Forbes profile. Every major asset Isabel owned was connected, directly or indirectly, to the Angolan state. Her husband, Sindika Dokolo, a Congolese art collector, was embedded in deals alongside her. Together, they moved money through a web that spanned Portugal, Netherlands, Malta, Mauritius.
These were not random countries. They were chosen for one reason: financial secrecy. Shell companies with no real employees, addresses that were just mailboxes, directors who existed only on paper. Money flowing in from Angolan state contracts, money flowing out to private accounts. One example? She was appointed head of Sonangol, Angola's state oil company, in 2016. Within 18 months, investigators later found over $100 million had been transferred out of Sonangol to companies she controlled. On the day she was fired, December 2017, transfers were still being processed. The Luanda Leaks documented contracts awarded to her companies without competitive tender. Consultancy fees paid for work that was never performed. State loans extended to her private businesses at terms no ordinary Angolan citizen would ever receive. This was not coincidence. This was architecture.
In 2017, something changed in Angola. José Eduardo dos Santos, Isabel's father, her protector, the man who had shielded her for decades, announced he was stepping down. His hand-picked successor, João Lorenzo. Dos Santos believed Lorenzo was loyal. He was wrong. Within months of taking office, Lorenzo began dismantling the family's grip on the economy. Isabel was fired from Sonangol. Her half-brother, José Filomeno, who had been running Angola's sovereign wealth fund, was arrested. The family's carefully constructed fortress was cracking from the inside. And then came January 2020, the Luanda Leaks. The international consortium of investigative journalists working with 36 media organizations across 20 countries published their findings simultaneously. The scale was staggering. Over her career, Isabel had received contracts, loans, and investment deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars from Angolan state entities. Auditors found evidence of payments made to her companies for work that was never done. State funds used to service her private debts. Public money belonging to one of the world's poorest countries redirected into a private empire. Angola is rich. Let that sink in. The country sits on billions of barrels of oil. It has diamonds, minerals, fertile land. And yet, in 2020, Angola ranked 148th out of 189 countries on the Human Development Index. Half the population lived below the poverty line. Infant mortality, collapsing hospitals, schools without books. Families in Luanda's Musekes, the sprawling urban slums, survived on less than $2 a day. These were not the families of a poor country. They were the families of a looted one. Meanwhile, Isabel dos Santos was photographed at Art Basel, at the Met Gala, on yachts in the Mediterranean. The contrast was not accidental. It was the result of the system. Every dollar moved offshore was a dollar that did not build a hospital. Every shell company was a structure designed to ensure accountability never arrived. She had not just stolen from a government, she had stolen from a generation. The Luanda Leaks also revealed something more uncomfortable. Isabel did not build her empire alone. She had partners, Western ones. McKinsey and Company, one of the world's most prestigious consulting firms, worked with entities connected to her. Boston Consulting Group had engagements in Angola during her tenure. PricewaterhouseCoopers signed off on audits for companies in her network. Major European banks facilitated transactions. Law firms in Lisbon and Amsterdam drafted the structures. Not one of them stopped to ask the question that the Luanda Leaks answered in 715,000 documents. Her empire was not hidden in some dark corner of the financial world. It was serviced, enabled, and legitimized by the most respected names in global finance and consulting. This is the part of the story that rarely gets told. Corruption at this scale does not happen in isolation. It requires infrastructure. It requires professionals. It requires respectable institutions willing to look away or look closer and say nothing. In December 2019, an Angolan court froze her assets, bank accounts, properties, business stakes, all locked. Portugal, where she held significant investments, including stakes in the bank Eurobic and the telecom NOS, came under pressure to cooperate. The Portuguese government, long a quiet beneficiary of Angolan elite money flowing into Lisbon real estate and business, was suddenly very uncomfortable. In the UAE, where she had relocated, the legal reach was limited. She gave interviews from Dubai. She called the charges politically motivated. She said she was a victim of her father's enemies, of a new government settling scores.
Some believed her, many did not. In 2022, her husband, Sindika Dokolo, died in a scuba accident in Dubai. Isabel pressed on, but the walls were tightening. Interpol issued a notice. Angola filed criminal charges, money laundering, influence peddling, criminal association. As of 2024, Isabel dos Santos remains in Dubai. Angola wants her back. She has not returned. The billions, or what remains of them, after frozen assets and legal battles, sit in jurisdictions that do not easily cooperate. The richest woman in Africa had become its most wanted. Here is the question that matters. Is Isabel dos Santos an exception, or is she a blueprint? Because the system that made her possible, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, the Western professionals who asked no questions, that system is still running. Right now, across Africa, state wealth is being redirected through the same architecture. Different names, same playbook. The Luanda Leaks produced headlines, it produced asset freezes, it produced criminal charges. What it did not produce, yet, is structural change in how Western financial systems handle money from authoritarian states. The banks are still open, the consultants are still available, the shell company registrations are still cheap and fast. Isabel dos Santos built her empire in the light. The paperwork was filed, the audits were signed, the contracts were legal. That is the most terrifying part of this story. She did not have to hide. The system was built to let her operate in the open. And until that system changes, the most wanted woman in Africa will not be the last.